مساء الخير. رجاء المصري مع حضرتكم. This kind of musing or rather خاطرة that I wanted to record. I'm somebody who is fond of history and politics to a great degree, being a Palestinian naturally. And with the advance of age, and luckily enough, I still enjoy a good memory. One can, beside the fact of really remembering events, it's more try to really interrelate these events, again with the bless of a memory that's still active and good. And since I'm talking politics, and of course, the purpose of this is really to talk about some major shifting political event in the Middle East that ultimately led to the situation of the total break of balance of power in the Middle East now, as a result of a certain transpiring event, major event, that shaped the subsequent geopolitics of the Middle East to the dire situation it is currently at. Total breakup of Arab solidarity, total breakup, as well as the dominant of the Zionist American hegemony of the politics of the Middle East. So a certain event that took place, in my view, a certain event at one point in time that caused these, I'd say the subsequent major shift in the geopolitics in general in the Middle East that led to the dire situation we currently living in. And I would really say, and here where this whole thing starts in my view, it's the landslide victory of Likud party under the leadership of the Israeli political leader at the time, extreme right, Nahum, who for a while was on the most wanted list of criminals causing as a result of what he caused of the bombing of the King David Hotel in Jerusalem in the late 40s, before the establishment of Israel, that led to the death of more than 100 victims, mostly British nationals working for the British mandate at the time. Beside the point, this landslide victory of Likud was most unexpected on July 1977, propelled big time the subsequent, of course, and other subsequent events relating to it in a way, led to the current disfavorable geopolitics in the Middle East for the Arabs, Arab solidarity, and the future of the Middle East, future of peace in the Middle East. Let's put it bluntly this way. When Nahum and the Likud came to power, most unexpectedly, on July 1977, that started a whole series of important political events, geopolitical events, much the subsequent of the success of the Likud party in those elections. And here I'd relate four or five or even six major events, shifts that caused the major shift in the geopolitics of the Middle East subsequently in the latter decades, I'd say. Decades, pardon, of the late 80s, 90s, 2000, 2010, 2020. And these include the Camp David, peace agreement between Egypt and Israel that saw Egypt pull out of the Arab defense agreement, causing a major upset to the geopolitics of the region, and the subsequent event of that. Another very, very important event is the coming to power of the Ayatollah, the mullahs in Iran, which, although it was sort of the independent development, nevertheless, somehow, I'd say the Western powers, colonialist power, imperialist power rather, and the Zionists must have had an enabling hand in that. That subsequently, and that's very much what's in play in this regard, caused the eruption of the Iraq-Iran war, devastating Iraq-Iran war, starting on August 1st, I believe, 1980. That lasted for a whole 8 years, diverted Iraq from its ambitious socio-economic development plans big time, with the subsequent bad events of the Gulf War in 1991 as a result of the stupid occupation of Kuwait by Saddam Hussein. I believe that was on August 1990. That led to the Gulf War on January 1991. And before that, I'd say, and that was in 1981, I'd say before that was the assassination of Anwar Sadat of Egypt. And I believe that was on October 1980. I think it was October 1980. I'd say it was enabled, in a way, indirectly, by the Israelis as well, although committed by the Islamist, fanatic jihadists. But again, considering the power of the Israeli intelligence, Mossad, and intelligence in general, and their deep penetrations and close collaboration with the Arab intelligence services, so they very much aware of what's going on in hiding. They must have, in a way, facilitated the assassination in that regard, indirectly enabling the assassination of Sadat, because Sadat, after Camp David, and after the loss of elections in the US of one term of Jimmy Carter, who was committed to peace in the Middle East upon the signing of the Camp David agreement on September 1978 in Camp David. So in 1982, then the Israelis launched under, of course, Nahum and Sharon as Minister of Defense, the war on Lebanon that eventually led to the defeat of the Fidaiyin, the PLO, that had to evacuate Lebanon completely with their arms. And subsequently, Israel subsequently occupied Beirut, despite assurances otherwise given to the Americans, to the American intermediaries, Philippe Habib at the time, that Israel won't occupy Beirut, and they did, and facilitated big time to the Phalangists and their recruits the terrible, the horrible, one of the worst massacres of the Palestinians in Sabra and Shatila, in the thousands of people, armless refugees. So what I want to say, okay, Nahum came to power, the Likud came to power in July 1977. Guess what? On September 77, a secret clandestine meeting took place with the goodwill of the monarch of Morocco, Hassan II, who is known with his close ties to the Israelis and allegedly the Mossad, according to the Egyptian journalist Hassanein Heikel, who alleges that once Hassan II, right before the summit meeting, crucial summit meeting in 1965 in Casablanca, Arab summit meeting, he allowed the Mossad to bug the place, the hotel where the summit was taking place. Again, these are allegations, cannot be established. What I mean here, Hassan II, from the beginning, it seems to me, from the beginning, he was facilitating for the breakup of Arab commitment to the Palestinians and Palestinian cause. Wanted the Palestinian cause to be separated of Arab politics. And the proof of it in many ways is he is the one, to the surprise of all the conferees, if you would, in a summit meeting, I believe it was on October 1974 in Rabat. He surprised everybody, above all Sadat and the late King Hussein, God bless his soul, of Jordan, with sponsoring a move to have the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, Arafat, become the sole representative of the Palestinians, getting the Palestinian Al-Qadiyya Al-Falastiniya, Palestinian cause, the Palestinian issue outside the main Arab politics. That was crucial. Then came this summit meeting in Tangier that he brokered, of the foreign minister of Likud, of Menachem Begin at the time, who was Moshe Dayan, the famous, well-known Israeli war hero, if you would, Moshe Dayan, and an envoy of President Sadat by the name of Hassan Touhami, that took place on September 1977, only 2 months after the landslide victory of Likud in Israel. Guess what? 2 months later, then less than 2 months later, Sadat took that step of flying to Jerusalem on November 1977. Shocked the world. And of course, it was a dramatic move. And actually on the plane flying from Cairo to Jerusalem on that event was accompanying Sadat no other than Barbara Walters, the famous TV anchor, ABC, I think, and big drama, big coverage in the US, and Sadat became a peace-loving hero in the US. He used to claim that he has control over the American people. He can tell the Americans what to do afterwards. Then, of course, the Camp David peace accord. Since after that visit to Jerusalem on March 1978, some kind of a meeting took place. Then in 1979, the Camp David Accord was signed between Egypt and Israel. That caused Egypt to pull out of the Arab solidarity completely. Now, the assassination of Sadat, afterwards, unfortunately, with the arrival of the mullahs to power in Iran, Khomeini, all of us, you know what happened, it's the story. Again, it's all interlinked, interrelated. The Shah of Iran and Saddam Hussein reached a peace agreement between them. The Iranians, the Shah of Iran was supporting, and Israel, the separatist Kurds under Mustafa al-Barazani. Ongoing war between the Kurds in the north and the central government of Iraq. Finally, the Shah of Iran and Saddam Hussein, during a meeting, a summit, OPEC leaders summit meeting in Algiers, I believe must have been 1974 or 75. And under the goodwill of the Algerian president, Houari Boumediene, reached a peace agreement, signed an agreement of friendship, and according to that one, the Shah of Iran would cease to support the Kurds, separatist Kurds, and Saddam Hussein in return would ask al-Khomeini, who was residing in Baghdad or in Qom, in Karbala rather, in Iraq, to abandon Iraq and leave Iraq and stop instigating against the Shah regime. What the Shah did, what Khomeini did finally, guess who sponsored him after that? The Western powers. He went to France and he resided in a little town, it's called Louvre-le-Château. It's the town of Brigitte Bardot. And there he started sending the cassettes for revolt, and they were influential, most effective against the Shah of Iran, that ultimately led to the toppling of the Shah of Iran. Now, the Western support, Israeli Zionist support, with the coming to power of al-Khomeini, not necessarily consciously known to al-Khomeini or to the mullahs, the Ayatollah at the time, or maybe later, they're not known to them, was intended to really ultimately cause a sectarian war, because the coming back of the Shiite ولاية الفقيه كما يقول. This is as a prelude to the Shiite brand of Islam that was foregone after the succession of power, after the death of Prophet Muhammad. Instead, in lieu of going to his nephew Ali, actually the highly revered first Imam of the Shiite, went to Abu Bakr and then to Umar, then the others who not really following on the Shiite then thought doctrine that succession of power for Islam ought to lie with the clergy and descendant of the Prophet from his daughter Fatima, the wife of Ali bin Abi Talib, the first Imam. So, the restoration, if you would, of al-Imamiyya, al-Shi'iyya, meant the coming back to Islam, to rule Islam, the correct way of the Shiite, again, the Shiite clergy. That's the whole concept, truly. And that for the Western powers and the Zionists, indirectly, to really prepare the grounds for an ultimate, all-destructive sectarian war, Shiite-Sunni sectarian war. And of course, also to divert the attention of the Sunni powers, above all the Gulf countries neighboring Iran, from their Arab nationalist causes, and most importantly of the Palestinian cause, more towards, more towards the West, the US above all, because of what's so-called the shared fear of the rising power of the Shiite. Khomeini, when he first came to power, he came with the slogan, well known to everybody, very vocal and very strong, of Tasdir al-Thawra, export the revolution, actively. And the best place to start is with Iraq, that has substantial Shiite constituency population, maybe more than half. And he started troubles in Iraq. He started universities, etc., throwing bombs, etc. The stupid Saddam Hussein took the bait. Saddam Hussein was intent, and he was a true Arab nationalist. Empty-headed, but a ruthless dictator. He wanted to get to his goal of cause the Arabs to rise again. So he was a dedicated, devoted Arab nationalist. He was non-sectarian. He was a secular. He did not play the sectarian game of Shiite versus Sunni in Iraq. Rather, after he was deposed and finally killed, those who collaborated with the Americans and the Iranians to topple him were Iraqi Shiites like Maliki, like Hakim, like others, who were refugees in Iran. They were political refugees in Iran. So Iran, with the Americans, etc., when finally the war on Iraq in 2003, the Anglo-American War, President Bush the son, and the Prime Minister of Britain at the time, they invaded Iraq, and actively the Shiite politicians collaborated big time. So now the war started between Iraq and Iran. These are wealthy oil-producing countries. Above all, Iraq, Saddam Hussein had high ambitions, and his socio-economic development was genuine and serious and correct to a lesser extent, and big lesser extent than what happened in the other Gulf chiefdoms that really went into really high inflationary, let's say, development that was not wise in essence, because it was instigated by the West for the purpose of the recycling of petrodollar as a result of dislocation of resources. Since oil, the price of oil is inelastic, since oil is a strategic commodity, you would buy it at any price. And this would cause a major shift in financial resources from the West to the Gulf countries that needed to be recycled. And the only way it could be done is through a mass, what's so-called economic development, ill-advised, because these countries did not possess really neither the physical infrastructure nor the social infrastructure to cope with the fast development. That's why, God bless his soul, King Faisal, God bless his soul, was pushed out of the way, was assassinated, because he was very conservative and he won't have allowed for that kind of development. Kissinger, of course, he founded the International Economic Agency to sort of regain the initiative with regard to the energy crisis and energy war. The death of King Faisal, God bless his soul, had people, above all King Fahd, God bless his soul, who was quite pro-American and quite lax about these matters, to really open the doors wide open for imports, for developments, and the country was not really prepared to handle that, which caused prices to go sky high, unnecessarily, for the purposes finally for the West to have the oil funds sort of recycled to the Western world. Saddam pursued a different strategy, totally different one, very well calculated, and he fought corruption like hell, to the point, if anybody found corrupt receiving illegal money, he would really execute him. He was a tough, ruthless bastard to that extent. So that's another major geopolitical development. I have to go back to the assassination of Sadat. Sadat, after the election of Reagan and the loss of elections by Carter, who was thought he would come back to power for a second term and force the Israelis to really deliver on the Camp David promises, to have peace with the Palestinians. He lost the elections because the mullahs, the Iranians, they invaded the American embassy and they took hostages, Americans. That became a major issue, overlapped on all the electoral issues at the time between Reagan and Carter, that caused the loss of elections to Carter. Loss of elections by Jimmy Carter, a very fine gentleman. God bless his soul. Now Sadat felt he's being cheated because he knew the Camp David Accord did not solve the Palestinian problem and is not bringing peace, as likud aggressive as ever. They bombed the nuclear plant, Tammuz, I think, in Iraq, in the heat of the Iraq-Iran war, and pursued settlement policies. Sadat felt he was short-changed on that. And I recall when I was in the US, I used to visit frequently. I was not yet living in the US, but I was a US citizen, nevertheless. I remember because, you know, I'm a political animal. I follow the news very closely in all their forms, including the printed press. And I was surprised that Sadat, on his first visit to Reagan after the elections, of course, was pushing for the implementation of Camp David. The news of his visit were on the third page. He was so adored by the American public because of his dramatic visit to Jerusalem as a peace lover, peacemaker. They start neglecting him. But Sadat did not change his line. Come on, guys, you need to deliver to the Americans. At this time, Reagan doesn't give a hoot for the Palestinian or the Palestinian issue. He was in tandem with the Likud. He overlooked it. And Sadat never stopped howling at the Israelis. Time to deliver. The Israelis wanted to continue the dirty work. Above all, because Sadat really still had certain influence in the West, and somehow with some of the conservative Arab countries. So the assassination of Sadat really helped the Likud geopolitical plans big time. Proof of it, when finally they launched the war against the PLO and they invaded Lebanon, something they could have never done if Sadat was alive. Unfortunately, sadly, when Sadat signed on the Camp David, caused him to withdraw from the Arab Defense Agreement, while at that, right before Camp David, above all the Saudis, Prince Sultan, I remember the Minister of Defense that I had the opportunity to meet, you know, while we were really, I was advising some Saudi investors, and very powerful man, the next man online on the throne, despite Abdullah being next age-wise after Fahd. They were really considering seriously establishing, after the October War, an Arab armed development, Arab, weapons development industry. And they started the first steps of it. And the Saudis, with Sadat, because he was accepted by the Saudis, since he was accepted by the American, all this before Camp David, Egypt would have become the base for the advanced military weapons development. And the Saudis were awash with cash because of the oil bonanzas, were really willing and ready to really support that. Now, with what I say then, it is these four or five important geopolitical developments subsequent to the landslide victory of the Likud of Nahum on July 77, that led within 4 or 5 years to the change of history, the total geopolitics of the Middle East to its abysmal, dire situation now. First of all, the Camp David Agreement, Second, the coming to power of the mullahs, the ayatollahs. Third, that caused subsequently the Iraq-Iran war that went away with the Iraqis' nationalist, ambitious plans to cause Iraq to become a major economic power in the Middle East, and the assassination of Sadat, and finally, the occupation of Lebanon and the defeat of the PLO. This is my reading of life, of political events, khatira, musing. You know, I'm becoming very old. Still dhihniyan, as you can notice from my recall of events and the dates and the names of the places and the persons. That, alhamdulillah, and I hope it continues a little bit more like that. But I felt like it's a duty to record this particular video clip that I hope to really share widely. Rajai Masri, all the best.